Well, would you look at that? A Western video game developer actually acknowledging problems that us players have without going so far as to blame the fans. Is the video game industry finally healing? Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and yes, if you hadn't heard, Dying Light franchise director says video games getting bigger is a major industry problem. You have 500 people working on a game for 5 years, and in the end, it might not actually be that successful. I swear, it's always just little bits moving forward like this. You take 2 steps forward and then it's 4 steps backwards. But maybe, again, I just appreciate people calling out problems that we, the gamers, the fans, have been saying for nigh on at least half a decade now. And Techland is a Western developer. They're based out of Poland. So, I mean, say what you will about them filthy Polacks, but they might have a point when it comes to this one. We're going to get into this article. Before we do, hit that subscribe button. I'm a nerdy news channel. I bring you nerdy news every day. And in the opinion of Dying Light franchise director Timon Smektala, that is definitely a hunky-dunky Polish name. One of the biggest issues currently facing this industry is that, simply put, video games have just gotten too big for their own good. And you know what? I would tend to agree with that. Unless it's some sort of, like, deep RPG that's going to offer thousands of hours, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of hours of gameplay and multiple characters and storylines and side quests. I mean, most games aren't like that. Even open-world games really can't handle that. Yes, you got your exceptions to the rule. You got your GTAs and whatnot. You got your Fallouts, which, to be fair, also an RPG, but in the end, most games just can't sustain that, yet they're trying. They're going for quantity over quality. How many hours can you shove into this game? Homie, I don't care. You want to know what games I play? Sonic the Hedgehog, Spyro the Dragon. I play a lot of platforming games. I play a lot of horror games like Resident Evil. You want to know how fast you can beat a Resident Evil on a speed run? Honestly, under 3 hours. Yeah, sure, your first playthrough might take you a few hours, might take 10, 11, 12 hours, what have you, but then you start getting real good and the game rewards you for being able to speed run it. At least the older games did, and you could go under 3 hours with only a knife, and bingo, bango, bongo, you get yourself like the infinite rocket launcher. Like, games cared more about the actual replay value. They cared more about the gameplay on your first playthrough or on subsequent playthroughs because they were that good. Jak and Daxter, that's an old collectathon game from 2001, and you know what? You don't have to collect every precursor orb or every power cell or whatnot to beat the game, but it feels rewarding to do so, so it encourages the exploration. But you can still sit down and beat that game in a matter of, for 100% completion, if you know the game like the back of your hand. I don't know, you can do it if you're not using any, like, game-breaking speedrun tricks in a handful of, like, 6 to 8 hours. I know, I've done it. It's not hard. But yeah, game devs nowadays, they don't get that. There's focus with jamming their game full of nonsense, repetitive fetch quests, things that are just beyond annoying and do not do anything to enhance the gameplay factor. Not that there's not a space for long games. Don't get me wrong, I love them when they're done well. Smekta offered his thoughts on the subject while speaking to the Game Industry Biz editor-in-chief James Batchelor in promotion of the upcoming Dying Light: The Beast. By the way, I never played the sequel, but the first Dying Light was a fantastic game. Absolutely loved it. It was a little weird hearing the English dub because the voice actor is the same voice actor for Chris Redfield in a different zombie game that's not Resident Evil, so that was like hard to wrap my head around for a bit, but all in all, I really liked the first Dying Light. Speaking to how The Beast continues a grow industry trend of studios choosing to develop shorter standalone titles in addition to the bigger franchise outings, see Insomniac's Marvel, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, or Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Mirage. And you know what? Miles Morales, despite what people think of that game, yes, it was short, it was glorified DLC, but also at least it wasn't the full price of a modern day game when games are now reaching $70. Like, if you're gonna give me a $70 game, homie, it better be worth that $70. And that $70 price tag doesn't necessarily mean the game has to be long. It means it has to be fulfilling. It means the time I spend with the game has to be worthwhile. The first, and I think honestly only $70 game that I bought that's actually been worth the $70 has been Tears of the Kingdom. And that's running on outdated hardware, but the game was so good, I felt like I got my money's worth out of that day one purchase. The director explained that while this change could be explained by looking at the current industry landscape from 2 distinct perspectives, the first one is the perspective of the player, Smektala explained. I understand that for many players, there is a fascination about the number of hours a game offers. Yes, there is. But the number of hours a game offers doesn't mean on a single playthrough. I have sunk literal hundreds of hours into Resident Evil 4. I can also beat Resident Evil 4, I'm talking about the original, that bullshit-ass remake. The original Resident Evil 4, I played through it. I lost count after time number 64. So over the course of the last several years, I played through that game over 64 times in the last, I don't know how long has that game been out, 15 years, whatever it may be. And I can, again, as a game I can speedrun under 3 hours, it's wild. But that's because the game is so good, I keep wanting to revisit it. I didn't just sit there and play one playthrough and expect a 1,000 hour or 100 hour game or whatnot. No, I got like the 12-hour experience I wanted. I moved on to other games, and then it was such a great game, I got the hankering for it and went back to it. And then I kept going back to it, and maybe that's what game devs should be focusing on. But then as players get older, the world around us gets more and more intense, and as we have lots of things to steal our attention, if you have a game you have to play for 50 to 100 hours to complete, it's really difficult to find time for that, right? It is 100% right. Nowadays, who's gaming? Yes, obviously children are gaming, adolescents are gaming, but so are adults, because it gives us that escapism, at least when the games are good. I know that's few and far between nowadays, but it's still happening nonetheless. When games are good and it gives us that escapism, we do want to keep going through it, we want to keep playing it, but if your game is 50 to 100 hours of artificially padded out runtime just because, oh, bigger is better, I got news for you, buddy. That ain't how it actually works, and we would just, play the first 10, 15, 20 hours, whatever it may be, and then get bored and replay something from the back catalog, maybe going back to the PS2 era or whatever, or maybe picking up some indie titles like Crow Country, which I've been enjoying a lot lately. For me personally, I started changing around the time of Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey. He added, they were so long. I'm a super hardcore, dedicated Assassin's Creed fan. Well, boy, I'm so sorry about Assassin's Creed Shadows then, my friend. But when I realized that I've played Odyssey for 100 hours and I'm not even finished with real life happening around you, it's very hard to get that commitment. Continuing, Smektala next asserted, from the developer's perspective, some of the problems that the industry faces right now is that games get bigger and bigger. And it's so annoying because as the games get bigger and bigger, they're not getting better and better. Look at Star Wars Outlaws. Almost everyone, unless you're a diehard Disney and or Star Wars shill, is blasting Star Wars Outlaws. Yeah, it might be big, it might be the very first open world Star Wars game, but nobody's actually enjoying it because it's a buggy mess on launch, because it doesn't have a whole lot to offer in the grand scheme of being a new Star Wars game or being an open world game, being a video game in general. What is it actually doing that's enticing players? That's not even getting into the DEI woke agenda that comes attached with any modern Star Wars project. The game is just, it's a full-on flop, and then they're trying to charge us not $70, but $130 for it, because, they want you to buy this big super deluxe edition that gives you access to the game 3 days early, even though really that means that's the day the game would drop, so really just players who pay the normal $70 get it 3 days late. But again, hey, look at Ubisoft, that's common modern industry standard practice because they're absolute retards. Yeah, if the games are getting bigger and bigger, you know what, go for it, but they better be getting better and better, and that rarely, if ever, has been the case, again, over the course of the last half decade or so. They have bigger budgets, they have more time to produce, he told Bachelor. You have 500 people working on a game for 5 years, and at the end, it might not be that successful. And therein lies the problem. Video games are starting to become like films, like Hollywood. You get a $300 movie, and then, oh wait, then there's reshoots, oh wait, then there's marketing, oh wait, then there's the theater cut, and these $300 million movies, which frankly is already too high to begin with, end up needing at least $700 million on average to break even. What are the odds that the vast majority of films make $1 billion? Yeah, not particularly many of them do, and video games are going down the same route. To use Star Wars Outlaws as an example again, it costs projected between $80 and $100 million to make this game. Bro, ain't no way Star Wars Outlaws is making $80 to $100 million. It's just not gonna happen. People don't care. They're not enthused. They're not enthralled. Ubisoft was touting it as the most expensive game they've ever worked on. That's not a good thing. When you can throw together a remaster of the Tomb Raider trilogy for $30 and like 30, not even 30 people working on it probably, and make gangbusters money, yeah, you might not make $1 billion, but if you make $500,000 on a game that costs you $10,000 to make, you're immediately doing so much better. And I don't know those are the actual numbers for Tomb Raider. I'm just, I'm making stuff up to prove a point. The fact of the matter is, keep your development costs low, keep your team size small. If that means a smaller game, by golly, it means a smaller game. That's why earlier using Spider-Man Miles Morales was actually probably a poor example, because yes, while that was a shorter game, while the price tag was lower, I bet that still took a big brunt of technical development and a large part of the development team from the Insomniac team that was working on the original Spider-Man, so it was still probably far more expensive than your average AA game. Something like Helldivers 2 will be infinitely more profitable than anything like Spider-Man. You can't say, well, Leon, you can't compare them. One's a multiplayer online game and one's a single player experience. performance. The fact of the matter is that doesn't matter. We're comparing the idea of a small AA budget style game to a AAA game that will never make its money back, and it looks like finally someone is actually recognizing the problem here. So for the developers, I think there's some kind of an allure in spending less time, less money, less people on creating something that players like, the director added. It gives you those shorter development cycles and also the ability to try different things. But are they, you say there's this allure there, you say it gives the developers the kind of allure in spending less time, less money, this, that, and the other, but they're not actually doing it. Maybe you're doing it, maybe you guys over there at Techland are doing it, and if so, by all means, more power to you. I applaud you. I think that's the right way to go. But I wouldn't say the vast majority of folks are doing this. I bet Grand Theft Auto is going to be a 500-hour game. Now, granted, to be fair, that's probably an exception to the rule as well. Everyone and their grandmother loves Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto 6 might be one of arguably the biggest game of all time. But again, not every game is Grand Theft Auto 6. So in fact, let's go ahead and compare it to The Witcher. Let's talk about the new upcoming Witcher game from whatever, not Rocksteady. Oh my God, why am I blanking on their name? CD Projekt Red. Yeah, they are going to put hours upon hours of development time. They're going to put years in the development cycle. They're going to put so much into a budget, into the people developing it, and it is not going to sell like The Witcher 3. I can already tell you, gaming is in a far different place now than it was a decade ago. You're not going to reach those same sales numbers. Even if it sells copies, it's not actually going to turn a profit. I will stake that claim about The Witcher 4 right here, right now, and I will say the same thing about the sequel to Cyberpunk 2077, because CG Projekt Red, they haven't figured this out. Or at least there's nothing that they have said to us to lead me to believe they have figured this out. Ultimately, pressed by his coach as to why, if his above perspective were both as widely held as he believed, the overall industry wasn't making a general turn towards shorter games, Spectala concluded there's some kind of inertia in the industry and obsession about the number of hours a game can offer. I think it's actually something we'll see more of because the industry will see it as another way they can offer meaningful interactive entertainment to players, he added. This might be part of the future of games in general. To speak candidly for a moment, and this is coming from the actual writer of this article. Who wrote this? Was it Spence? I'm curious, because if it was Spence, of course it was Spence. I'm reading through here, I'm agreeing with the points. Yeah, it makes sense that it's Spence. Homie he knows what he is talking about. Clearly the best when it comes to the bounding and comics writers. No offense to everybody else. I love you all, but Spence, you do it different, buddy. To speak candidly for a moment, as somebody who regularly plays video games, he's right. In recent years, too many developers have come to conflate length with quality. In doing so, choosing to wrap their core experience in hours of repetitive fetch quests, boring map unlock journeys, and unsatisfying gear systems, rather than letting players enjoy the game and move on. And now, to be fair, there are exceptions to this rule. Persona 5 is arguably, it might be, I think, the best made game of all time. It's not my favorite game of all time, and it's definitely a game that's not going to be for everybody, given how it's, both a life sim and dungeon crawling RPG wrapped into one. It's definitely a niche game, but it's a niche game that exploded to a massive audience, and I think Persona 5 is arguably one of, if not the greatest made game of all time. And it goes for between 80 to 120 hours, regardless of how good you are at the game, regardless of the playthrough. There is really no way to feasibly speedrun Persona 5, and yet I've played through it no more, no less than 5 times, which means I've sunk somewhere between 380 and 500 hours into this game, and that's counting the Royal version as well, the remaster that had extra content, the whole nine. The fact of the matter is, that game is so perfectly crafted, has so much variety in its gameplay loop, has so many different avenues and options and ways you can play it, that when you have a game that's 80 to 120 hours, and people still keep going through and keep replaying it, that is a thing about quality, not the length. They are not the same. They just so happen to make a quality game that is exceptionally long. However, in an era where budgets are too high, dev cycles are too long, and enjoyment is dwindling, perhaps some studios, Ubisoft, would do well to refocus on their attention on making a good game rather than a long one. Presently, Dying Light the Beast does not have a confirmed release date. I love this article. I think this is one of the best articles I've read in a long time, because in a way, you could look at this as a positive thing. It's not just me sitting here and ragging about, oh, woke culture this, black people in video games that. No, we see a Western dev, again, European, but Western enough. They're not Chinese, they're not South Korean, they're not Japanese, they're fucking Polish. These filthy Polacks, they get it. They understand what's going on. At least this guy does. He's like, look, gamers are tired of the slop, man. We are seeing video games that have 100 hours of gameplay, 200 hours of gameplay, and it's padded out by the same repetitive fetch quests, cutscenes, games that, moments that basically play for you, where it's just a walking sim and you can't actually do anything or interact with anyone. It is so mind-numbing, the state of the games that the video games are in. And here we've got at least one Western developer acknowledging the problem, not only acknowledging the problem, but acknowledging it as a problem, as opposed to something that, oh, the industry has changed, gamers should just get used to it. No, gamers shouldn't get used to it. Gamers should have the mental and emotional fortitude to stick up for themselves and say, you know what, we reject you. But they haven't really been doing that, with the exceptions of insane, ESG, DEI-based games like Dustborn, like Concord, like, Suicide Squad kills the Justice League, the list goes on. When it comes to these egregious factions, when the woke ideology, we've finally started seeing some gamers push back. But even then, they haven't exactly been on like big mainstream AAA titles. GTA 6 could be woke as hell. People are still going to buy it, so I do not think that's an end-all be-all cure. But for those gamers that just don't really have a stake in the culture war, don't care, don't understand it, don't know anything about it, or all of the above, yeah, they can sense a problem with the actual games and the gameplay themselves. And that is just as important, in my opinion, to the culture war stuff, because culture war is not just political. It's about the fact that we've had these long-time hobbies that we have loved be usurped by individuals that don't understand them or don't care about them. And that's not just a politically and ideologically driven thing. That comes from people also just not knowing how to craft new entries into the zeitgeist when it comes to this hobby that we have loved for God knows how many years or even decades. It's maddening. But if we see someone that's acknowledging this, yes, while I'm sitting here, I'm ragging and I'm upset because I'm thinking about all these games lately that have done it poorly, at least somebody is acknowledging the problem, and hopefully, by God, hopefully, will do what they can to, at least with their studio, fix it going forward. And I would say that's a good thing at the end of the day. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, where you can find me at Bolt the Word. And please do subscribe. I am a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. Not always about the state of the video game industry, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon, and become a member for $4.99 a month. You can join the Discord, choose the articles I go over on a day-to-day basis, choose the videos I react to on my Friday night live streams, and of course get involved with over 80 other vital idols. We are a bright, beautiful, glowing, vibrant community that I cannot wait to grow even further, because we do care about diversity, but only one kind of diversity of thought. So if that's interesting to you, hit subscribe, join the Discord, and until next time, it is all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.